Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm one of your co-hosts, Rico.
And I am your other co-host, Tony Borrego.
And this is the podcast known as Relatively Sound, the podcast that is a physical impossibility. Today on the podcast, Tony and I are finishing up this month's album for album series. And last week we talked about an Incubus album. It was my second Incubus album that Tony has given me in spirit of our 1 year. So I decided, well, in spirit of our 1 year, let's really make it come full circle. And I gave Tony his second Tragically Hip album. And that album is Phantom Power. Now, our first episode ever of this podcast was the beginning of our album for album series, where almost a year ago now, I gave Tony fully completely the Tragically Hip's third studio album. So now we're back with their sixth studio album. You can go and listen to that episode if you haven't heard it. It's a little rough sounding, probably, with just the audio equipment and editing and just our cadence. But Tony, just give a brief what you thought about fully completely when you heard it a year ago.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. As simple of a sentence as that is, I just really enjoyed it. It was a great first album to get for the podcast, and it is one that you have gifted me on vinyl very so kindly, and one that I still listen to. Yeah, I can't say nothing but good things about it.
And since, I told you I'm going to be giving you way more hip albums down the road, I've kind of told you not to really listen to anything else from them. When it comes to Phantom Power, I know you already knew one of the songs, Bob Cajun, because I think when I got into the hip some years ago, I was trying to get everyone into the hip, and one of the first songs I'd send people was Bob Cajun, which turns out that wasn't the right song for everyone. For Lindsay, it definitely wasn't. Even though she likes the song, like there's other hip songs she just much prefers. I just was like sending it to like her and you and stuff because I was like, oh, this is one of my favorite, hip songs. But surprisingly now, it's not even my favorite on the album anymore, even though I do still kind of consider it like one of their best. So you going into this, you only have really fully completely the album to compare it to. Just like when we did the Incubus episode last week, I only really had Light Grenades to compare to their album, Make Yourself, which is what we covered last week. So I guess we could just start with your general, thoughts on the album when you first heard it. My only hope, because I'll just play my cards. This is my favorite hip album, even though I feel like I can make a case for 2 or 3 of their other albums. Like sometimes I feel Fully is my favorite. Sometimes I feel In Violent Light is one of my favorites. Day for Night would probably be one of my favorites if it wasn't for the production. But for you going into this, I already know that you're not going to like it more than Fully. So I've accepted that. So you don't have to worry about disappointing me because I already know you're not going to like it more. But there are other albums of theirs that I feel like you could like more than Fully. But this time around, I didn't go that route. I wanted just to show you what I find to be their best album. And this is 3 albums after Fully Completely. So this was released in 98. So you can kind of get a sense of where the band was going at this time. So I'm curious of just what your thoughts were.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed it, but I wasn't wowed by it. I will say right off the bat, I like all the songs, and I don't think any of the songs are bad, and there's nothing that is like wrong with the album. But for me, there was just a few extra boxes I wanted checked off for me, but I will say after a few listens, and I've listened to it at least 10 times now, I'm starting to enjoy it more. Some of the songs are growing on me, and the performances. So, now that I got that off my chest, next question.
Well, I will say too, with the hip, when I was getting into them, I was kind of listening to their whole discography instead of going like album for album, which is unlike me. And yeah, there were some albums like Fully Completely that I think there were songs off of that album that I was more into than some of the stuff off this album, Phantom Power. But like once I finally like listened to everything they've released and like really given it like multiple listens, I just found this one just to be like the most solid. It has a little bit of everything from them, but it's like it's kind of, to me, I compare it to Pearl Jam's Yield, where it's like if you like a certain sound from this band or from Pearl Jam, Yield or this album might not be your favorites from each band respectively, because it's, to me, it's a little bit like the best of everything, which some people don't like that from bands. Some people like, oh, if I'm listening to a band, I want their heavy sound or I want their this sound, you know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah, yeah.
um on first listen, I'm curious, did you find it to be like, because it's not as, I would say, straight, like it's definitely less straightforward rock than Foley. Foley, like there's what, one acoustic song, and then the majority of the songs rock pretty hard. You know, there's a couple songs that maybe have a slightly slower tempo, but it's a pretty straightforward rock album. This has, you know, couple acoustic numbers, a couple slower moments. And there's not, I don't even know what, I think that there's two, to me, there's like two kind of rock songs on this, and then the rest are just kind of like, to me, a good balance of like rock and pop. So was that something that kind of right away made you not like it as much as Fully Completely?
It was definitely noticeable, I would say. Like, I know, especially because this, is a few years later for the band, it wasn't going to be as high energy, have that real youthful intensity to it, if that makes sense. Um, but I know I did enjoy that it was still rockin' moments, but it still had more variety than Fully Completely. I think there's a little more depth to this album as far as, you know, um, the styles of the songs, the compositions. But I also think in some ways the songs felt maybe they could have been worked on a little more, like they felt almost unfinished. I don't know if that's the best way to put it. Um, for example, like Something On, I feel like there's just not a lot happening in it, but it's still a catchy song and I like the lyrics. So I have a lot of mixed feelings on it, if that kind of makes sense.
So then, was there any song where you had no mixed feelings? Well, you've already said that there's no song you dislike, so I guess there's not going to be like any song that you just, unless some of them, did any of them grow on you, or as in like, was there any that you really didn't like on first listen, or like on first listen you kind of enjoyed everything?
Yeah, okay. I kind of lied. First listen, I did not really like Thompson Girl. I
Okay, I
thought
can
it
see that.
was
I can see
I
that.
I genuinely thought it was annoying the first time I heard it.
I don't know if
Um,
I'd call it annoying, but I definitely, that
well,
was not a song that stood out for me at
or
first.
maybe I should say this. By that song, I got, you know, Gord. I really like his vocals on Fully Completely, and I like it on a large part of this album, but there's spots where I think it's just kind of a little irritating after a while.
So
Um,
on Thompson Girl, was it like was it the chorus where he kind of like, it's like he doesn't go falsetto, but he definitely goes in a higher range of his vocals. Is that the part you're talking about?
yeah, but I really like that part now. That's like my favorite part of the song is
Oh,
that
okay.
note.
So,
So in
oh,
this
that's
case,
weird.
it really grew on me, but I don't know. I guess I kind of had kind of like understand what he was going for with the vocal approach. Like he seems definitely, like with his lyrics too, to be doing a different sort of thing than Fully Completely, which I
Yeah.
think is
So
good.
I'm curious. Like, yeah. I mean, we're kind of going all over the place, but that's cool. I'm curious then, like, because I know on Fully Completely, a lot of songs went over your head, which totally is like they went over my head too, because a lot of it had to do with like Canadian culture, which, we're not Canadian. So, but I do feel like his like this is to me where I think it's like not even his peak, but this is like where he like almost makes every song on every one of his albums, whether it's solo or with the hip, unique in one way or another. Where with Fully Completely, I do feel like up to then, like there were still some songs where even if it was like this could be about something, it was almost too vague. But with these songs, they're so specific that even if you don't know what it's about, like it has to have a deeper meaning. Um, I don't which like approach do you prefer? Did you prefer the lyrics on Fully Completely? as opposed to Phantom Power?
Well, so with Fully Completely, kind of the more straightforward lyrics and stuff, they just kind of fit the songs a little easier, instead of trying to do these whole sentences. So especially when you just have like a rock song that's loud and big, just hearing kind of the simpler lines is easier to get into. I know for me, like once I read the lyrics to some of these songs, I started enjoying them even more. They kind of built more character. But to be truthful, I don't think there's one song on this album that I think I actually know what it's about. I'm very lost on a lot
So
of these, but I do have, songs where I really like certain lyrics in it, looking at it just
yeah,
isolated.
but as someone who out of the two of us, I would feel like I'm the one that either pays attention more lyrically overall, or I do the task of investigating the lyrics. Like I go to different websites, I take different people's opinions into consideration about what the song may be about. With that said, like, did it bother you that you didn't know what these songs were about? Did that dock a point off of it, off the album for you?
Interesting perspective there. No, I wouldn't say so, but I think it made warming up to it take a little longer, I think. I'll say that.
And I will say, I'm looking at the track list right now. To me, there's only maybe two or three songs where I feel like it's somewhat clear. And then even then, like it's like just a very broad message of it is clear, but there's still like each song has like references that are super not clear. But like Bob Cajun, I think is behind all its like kind of metaphors and things like that. Like I do feel like it is like it's supposed to be a love song, specifically from the perspective of a cop. Um,
Oh,
and then Emperor Penguin, the closing track, Gord's touching on like relationships, um, and Emperor Penguin, he's singing about how these penguins, they sit on the egg, right, and to hatch their baby. But he's also thinking about these penguins who have to like swim and but at the same time he's like also talking about like an alien invasion, like someone calling into a radio station. So it is like very confusing, but like at the end of the day, it's like a song about relationships between like parents and like, the struggles, and the perseverance, especially of the mother when it comes to like having a baby. Um, but you wouldn't get
see,
that if you just read the title Emperor Penguin. It's like, I think the first time I read that title, I'm like, who would name this song like this? And then it's like, oh, this is an amazing song.
yeah, okay, I will. See, that's one where I feel like the lyrics are actually quite scattered, which kind of it doesn't make me not like the lyrics, but I don't know. I think really the beauty of the lyrics for me in a lot of these songs is just his delivery on certain lines and just kind of how casual he makes some of it.
Yeah,
Um,
there's some lines where it took me a while to like, and even today, there's still hard songs to sing along to. One of my favorites to sing along to is the opening track, Poets, where you have these really long lines where he sings like for example, he sings, "When the birds can be heard above the reckoning carts doing some final accounting." That's like a sentence you would read like in a book, but he sings that sentence in the song in one whole breath, basically. But not fast either. He doesn't. He's not ever rapping these lyrics. Like this, it never becomes. He never ends up singing it like "Pardon Me" from "Make Yourself." Like
Great
he's
callback.
singing them, like, but he does it in a very interesting cadence where he somehow makes it fit. Like I don't ever think it's too wordy. Like there's some musicians, especially I feel like as musicians get older, like unfortunately Eddie Vedder, like Pearl Jam albums, like their last one, there's just lines where he's like rushing in words to make them fit, and it takes me out of the song. But I don't think Gord ever does that here on any of the songs.
I feel like he sounds super focused, which I think that is, kind of interesting about it. Like he sounds on a mission to deliver these lyrics.
Yeah, and there's still some songs that like even I like the rules. That song is so like I think you can make a broad statement about it, but there's just so little minute details where he's like, and I feel like every song too, he kind of sticks with like a theme. Like in the rules, he's singing about like a crossing guard and like thoughts crossing a road with the help of a crossing guard. But it's so weird, and like you never learn what these quote rules are. But I feel like that's kind of the beauty of the song. Like you can kind of interpret it as your own. But I feel like every song on this album, I think has a couple standout lines. Like even if it's not your favorite song, I feel like every song has one or two very interesting lines that just stand out on its own.
I would definitely agree with that. Sometimes it's because they're so weird, or like Bob Cajun, the constellations revealed themselves one star at a time.
Yeah, like
Like
that's just a great line.
that's a standout line for me.
But it's still the
Um,
weirdness because like people for a while like didn't like until the song came out. There was a lot of people, especially people who aren't from Canada, who like didn't know what Bob Cajun was. It's a little town. People didn't know that, you know. So even
I
like,
feel like you could infer that though.
well, when you listen to the song, yeah, but if you just heard the word Bob Cage, I didn't even like. I think when I first read the line, I had no idea even how to say it until I heard the song and heard him sing it. You know,
Right.
like I didn't know that was. It sounds like a name of something, but I couldn't tell you where or what, you know, specifically. So you know, but I'm curious, like you know, we're talking a lot about the lyrics, and we'll still, I think, when we get into more specific songs, but what did you think of the music? And my other kind of question that I wanted to ask you earlier was, do you think any person in the band either had like, and I'm really not trying to compare this to Fully Completely because I think this is its standalone album, you know, but because that's your only other reference point for this band, do you think anyone in the band like kind of had a step up or a step down when it came from Fully to this album?
Are you reading my
Your
mind right
reference.
now?
I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah. Um, the guitar work definitely felt a notch down to me. And funnily enough, before this podcast and our pre-talk, we Rico was commenting on guitarists and their certain mindset towards things. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just thought the playing was a little less exciting. There
But did you
wasn't.
feel like it was ever deliberate? Like, did you feel like it was lazy songwriting, or do you feel like maybe for the style of songs, that's just what had to be done? Like, did you feel like were there ever any times in any of the songs where you're like, oh, I would be adding guitars right here, or I'd be doing a type of riff here, you know?
Mm.
Not that I ever think you would listen to a song and go, ah, I can do it better. But I'm just saying, like, because like, yeah, the guitar work is just it's less flashy on this album than really their first three albums, maybe any album up to this point. But in my opinion, I feel like that was kind of a deliberate choice, especially because I feel like a lot of the song, there's a lot of cohesion in the guitar parts. Like there's a lot of like moments where like there's slides, right? Or there's like similar tones. But I feel
Yeah,
like
the
it's on
guitars like
purpose.
yeah, the guitars really blend on this album, which you don't really get that. I don't know nearly as much on Foley, but so it was a cool texture and stuff, and I think it did fit the songs because like the first half of the album, or I should say the first like three songs, they all felt very kind of garage rocky to me, which was kind of cool. And so I think kind of the simple music with, sorry, not the simple music, but the more straightforward guitar parts, it works well underneath the increase in lyrics that Gord is singing. I feel like, if the guitars did a lot more, it'd be kind of imbalanced. Um, just thoughts on that.
Now, did you think you kind of already said that? Well, I don't know if you said that you like Gord more on this album than like lyrically than on, you know, on Foley, but did you think the drums or bass were any different sounding? And this is not a trick question. Like none of the members changed.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not
I was
saying that. I'm
wondering.
not saying that because like, oh, someone else played the drums on this album. No, like, but I'm just curious if like, you know, you like the drumming and bass work as much on this album?
Um, yeah, I would say. I mean, there was some standout bass moments for me for sure. The big one, of course, being "Escape is a hand for the traveling man." Um, Drums and stuff. I didn't love the way the drums sounded all the time. Um, like I don't know, it was a little more like kind of garagey sounding with kind of maybe the performance, where I feel like Foley was just really amped up. But this is a different album. It's going for a different thing. So I know it's my only reference point, but it's kind of hard to compare with it.
Yeah, because when I down the road, I give you like the third album, like your third album from the Hip, it's going to be different than both of these albums that you've heard now.
Great.
So I do want to kind of now get into little specifics, and I'll let you pick. Whether you want to talk about some of your favorites or some of your least favorites. Like I want you to kind of get into the weeds of it.
Oh, okay.
You can do controversial takes, however you want to approach it.
Well, okay. Let's start with my favorite one. My favorite on
You'll
the
have
album.
an absolute favorite one, right? Like it wasn't
I do.
close. Okay.
I mean, there's a few that are pretty top. The top two for me are pretty close, but
Well, let's just hear your first one. Your number one.
"Escape is at hand for the traveling man."
Okay. Now, I'll say this. I originally thought this would be in your top like 3, but then you made a comment to me a couple of weeks ago when we were on the phone, and you said something like, "Yeah, I've been listening to it, but I need to focus more towards the end of the album." And I know a lot of that is the same reasons we always talk about, where it's like when you're listening to an album, especially when you're multitasking, sometimes by the end of it, you're just unfortunately paying less attention. But I kind of was wondering, like, oh, maybe he just doesn't like the songs near the end or, after the halfway point. So, but I'm happy to hear that because this one was a grower. For a while, I just could not get into this one. Till one day it just clicked.
Really?
And I'm like, oh, this song is so great. Yeah, for a while, I just found it a little boring. But then, like, I don't know. It's just like, I really got into
it's like a vibe out track, though.
It is. It's like a 5-minute track where it's like, there's really only 2 sections. And the music really only swells up during that second section, and then I would say near the end. So it's a very vibey track. I totally agree with that. But what makes you love it so much?
Really, the atmosphere. Gord's delivery it's more low key, which is a nice change of pace on the album. Like it still sounds like a performance, but it sounds, I don't know. It sounds a little more intimate, I guess. And I like the lyrics in it too. He's like describing a band. It would like, can you please explain that whole band dynamic in that song?
Well, yeah. First of all, it comes from a real life moment. Like the song he wrote as a tribute to a lead singer of a band named Material Issue. His name was Jim Ellison. But like in the song, like the song starts off with him singing about being on like a bill for like a festival or show. And that part is true. Like the Hip were on the same bill as this band called Material Issue. But like as the song goes on, like Gord is making up fake names. Like the lyric is, "We hung around until the final band called Escape is at hand for the traveling man." So that the whole song title is the name of a fake band that Gord created just for the song. And as the song goes on, he name checks made up songs. They launched into "Lonely from Rock and Roll." So that's the song title, "Lonely from Rock and Roll." Followed by "They Checked Out an Hour Ago." That's another song title. Closing with "All Desires Turn Concrete," another made up song title. So when you're listening to the song, it's almost kind of hard to interpret until you're reading the lyrics, because like he's singing these phrases that on their own make sense, like "all desires turn concrete," but in the song, like there's parentheses around the title because he's singing like that's a song title, if that makes sense.
Right. And I think for that exact reason, you're just saying there is like, that's why I liked it, because even though maybe conceptually overall that song, I can't really piece it together, or like you said, like you can't really look at it one line at a time. But when you're listening to the song, even if you're not really paying that much attention, certain lines just kind of really grab your ear. you know, with his, very specific lines about just basically the different band names and stuff. So I don't. I just thought it was a really enjoyable experience, and yeah, it moved me.
Oh, and I think too, maybe something that I guess you moving you to is like, I feel like this song is also Gore singing it just about like the love of music and playing live. And there's been multiple songs, like there's been a couple songs before this album, and there's been some songs after this album where he sings about the life of touring, right? Or playing music. And when he sings lines like those melodies come back to me in times beyond our heartbeat, or the very final line of the song, which I really love, where he sings long conversations or idle chit chat, maybe dive in or maybe hang back. I feel like it's just very, especially you with, you playing live music, you having a lot of friends who play live music, you playing live music with your friends. Like, I feel like this was a song that I felt like was going to jump out at you, especially if you caught at least half of the lyrics.
Right, right. Yeah, and I didn't even really realize that it was about all of that until I read the lyrics, and I was like, oh, I thought this song was going to be a lot more, abstract. So I felt like this
Yeah.
one really did have a direction for it.
And that bass line is so good.
Yeah, with the chords in it and the
Now,
arpeggiation.
did I send you because lately maybe it's something I should have mentioned earlier in this episode. They're um doing celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, and just this month
Wow.
they released a box set reissue, with a bunch of extra material. But the band's been trying to promote it on different social media, and Gordon Sinclair, the bass player, he's been um talking about like experiences recording and playing the songs. And so he's been doing like TikToks and stuff like that. And he did one about talking about coming up with like that bass line. And I don't remember if I sent you that one or not.
You did. I saw it the other day.
Yeah. And that was just cool hearing him just playing on bass line just isolated. I thought, oh, that was like, that's really cool.
Yeah, it makes for a great texture in the song.
And it's
And
like the longest song too. Like there's probably not many. Now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if there's any songs on like favorite songs of yours on albums where your favorite happens to be the longest one. Granted, 5.5 minutes isn't like, well, it's actually now that I look at it, it's closer to 6. It's 5:52. So it's surprising like the longest one on the album, especially the second to last song, the penultimate track, is your favorite.
well, remember too, what was it? The Queens of the Stone Age album wasn't the last song on it your favorite, which was like 10 minutes or like 8
That's
minutes?
that's true. That is true. Well, that one has like that hidden kind of track at the end, like just the
Oh, that's
acoustic
true.
playing. So that adds like at least another minute and a half maybe to it. So this one's all like kind of song, although it does start, and I feel like this song does start and end kind of slowly. Like there is a little bit of a building, but like you said, it's very just kind of atmospheric the whole time.
Right.
But it is a groove that you can just get kind of lost in. But it's like
Right.
not the
Good way.
slowest and it's not the fastest. So I'm still am a little surprised it's your favorite.
Yeah, it just hit right.
If you had to pick a second, you said there was like one more that was pretty up there.
Yeah, Bob Cajun for sure.
Yeah, that one is. I mean, it's
How
kind of
can you not like that
undeniable.
song? Right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Now the problem is like that was one of the first songs I heard from them, and I kind of thought it could be topped, but then I heard a song like Fully Completely, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I think I do like Fully Completely more. But yeah, it's just kind of undeniably such a great song. Like it's catchy, but then it's very poetic. It's also got a really great groove. It's also kind of vibey a little bit. You have a lot of like organ in it, which the producer for this album, Steve Berlin, he added actually he played some percussion and some keyboards on the album. So I think that was him playing those keys.
Oh, okay, that's pretty neat. Um,
Um,
yeah, this song really does groove though. Like you hear the acoustic intro, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, it's like it's grooving.
but that bass line comes in like it's so good.
Yeah, dude, the band kills on that one. And I like too the very short ending, but where they do like the dun dun
And it
dun.
ends on that I think it's an E minor chord. Like the song is mostly like just what is it, like G to A minor? but
Yeah, something like
there's an
that.
E minor in the bridge, and they go back to it to end the song, which I thought was really really smart.
Mm,
Because the song, I originally when I heard the song, I'm like, oh, it's gonna fade out because they've been doing this outro for like a minute and a half, but then it actually has an ending.
right, which is just neat to see them go the extra distance there.
Yeah, but like you already kind of knew that song, so I don't know if maybe you just hearing more hip has made you like it more, or if that was just one you've always liked since I've showed you it.
I think I've always liked it. I think maybe I thought it was boring, but that's because I don't think I've ever actually sat down and listened to it. But no, I really liked it. If I had to critique something, I don't know. The bridge feels a little awkward to get into, but that's a real nitpick there, and I don't really even see it as a problem now.
It's fun though to play when I play on just me and acoustic guitar. It's actually pretty fun because like there's a little bit of extra energy when it comes to the vocals in the bridge. And
Yeah, I
it's
can see
not
that
as
for
it's
sure.
not as awkward as you think. Like I guess when you hear the full band do it, because there's not really I guess a
Mm,
transition. It just kind of goes right into it.
right.
So now I'm curious,
Yeah.
what is Thompson Girl still your least favorite?
I don't know. That one's kind of catchier now. For some reason, it makes me think of Nirvana when I hear it.
Weird.
Um, I don't know. I mean,
Do
like
they even
Polly's kind
have
of
many
got the
acoustic songs?
yeah, Polly.
Oh,
It
yeah.
doesn't sound like Polly, but I don't know.
For listeners, I've never really liked Nirvana.
I deeply offended him just
That's one
there.
of my very hot controversial takes. I've never I don't even know if I could tell you a Nirvana song I really like. Like if I had to pick one, I think I would say Heart Shaped Box, but just none of their songs do anything for me. That I guess that caused Tony it just blew his mind so much that he may be disconnected from our call. Um,
No, don't worry. I'm back. All right. I'm gonna pretend that didn't happen.
but
Um,
so if Tom's a girl, like so you said it grew on you, and that one had to grow on me too. It's kind of weird, like because it comes after Bob Cajun, so you get kind of the two acoustic songs back to back, which I kind of thought maybe would be hard for you to get into when you were listening to the album.
yeah, yeah. Now that you mention it, that is true.
But I think that one also has kind of like a
Well,
cool
I
bass
would say
line.
more because like Bob Cajun, it has like a real kind of like happy,
Yeah,
mellow sound. Where then Thompson Girl starts off a lot more aggressive acoustic.
but it has a cool bass line too.
Right. Like the song does have good things going on in it, but there's just it's a more simple, straightforward song.
But it's
Um,
also not as catchy too. At least I don't think so.
I mean
Like
the
I
falsetto bit, but otherwise it's
which you didn't like though on first listen.
well, you learn to love the quirks, Like this is an album that I've definitely enjoyed the more I listen to it. And I can see why you really admire Gord, you know.
So then if you had to pick a least favorite, maybe other than Thompson Girl, is there one that's like very obvious or
Um, I don't know. I would probably say membership. I think you might be surprised by that.
I am for two reasons. One, I'm surprised because I don't know. I don't think I would say it now, but I think the song that I would have officially picked my least favorite when I really got into this album was Membership. So I'm kind of surprised that we both have a similar take, but I'm also surprised because I did not think I thought that would be one you would like more because it's like, it's kind of grungy. Oh, for this album, not even the grungiest song though. Like Day for Night, half of those songs are grungier than Membership, but Membership has definitely got like a heavier sound. I would say that this and Vapor Trails are like the two heaviest songs on this album.
I would agree.
But
Um,
Membership you don't like as much, and is I wonder if it's this. What's the reason? I wonder if it's the same as me.
well, I got really excited because I was like, "Oh, this is heavy, right?" I'm like, "This is gonna be sick," and the song was pretty much the same thing all the way through. I thought the vocal performance wasn't really captivating, um, especially because it's just singing that kind of one long melody over and over. So I don't know. It just didn't really entice me. It got maybe a little annoying after I heard the album like 6, 7 times. Um, and I don't think it's bad. It just doesn't do much for me.
Yeah,
And it's almost 5 minutes long. I think length's a big thing with it too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I That's kind of how I felt when I first heard it. Things had to kind of grow on me for membership. Now I really like it because I do like that it's pretty a pretty dark song. Like just the atmosphere, like just the music is very dark sounding. But I like the tempo of it. Like it's kind of it's not a fast song, but it has this like back and forth movement, like if you're on a boat. And I feel like I've been always trying to crack the song lyrically. We've we've covered it on the Tragically Hip subreddit where I write weekly songs of the week write ups and like analysis. And like membership, I consider it like he's using it as a metaphor. Like when you're part of a membership, it can seem like a lifetime like commitment. You're making a commitment for something, right? And but he's also saying a lot about the water. And
Right.
I was like, even just today, I was spinning the record in prep for this. Not that I needed to, but just because I love this record so much in prep. And I was thinking, membership. What's the last word? Like the last four letters of membership? Ship. So I
Mm.
don't know if like that was
Haha.
intentional. Like he thought of the word membership, and then he was like, take it literally. Like okay, ship. And then so I don't know. I feel like it's a song about like life, like when something's like a commitment. But then there's so many like random lines too that kind of throw you off. Like are you singing about butterscotch and the houseflies?
Right, right. I remember reading them and just being like, I give up. Like I don't know. I can't crack the case.
But yeah, it's not the most interesting song unless you dive into it. Musically too, like I think the best part, even though I used to hate that intro. I
Really?
yeah, that just the guitar tone, dun dun dun. Like I don't know, I didn't love it. I like the syncopation with the drums, but I didn't love the guitar. But I really like the guitar and especially the bass in the verses. But the chorus, yeah, to me the chorus too is not like there's not a lot to catch on to. And I will agree, like Gord, he chose to sing the song in his lower range the whole time. Other than like when they go back into that intro, he does like a kind of part. And I wish if he did more of that, then I feel like this song would have been higher. Like I wish on the deluxe box set they would have included an alternative take. Maybe they just didn't have one for
Oh.
this song, but I feel like this song could have been one of the few cases where an alternative take would have maybe been better than the final take they used.
Yeah, well said there. I agree with that. Um
So now I'm just gonna
so
ask you, unless you wanted to go a specific route, I was just gonna ask you about random songs.
well, I will point out that my two least favorite songs are grouped together. You know, Thompson Girl into membership.
Okay. So then
So just an observation.
I was gonna ask you after having like two acoustic songs and then having a rock one that you didn't love, what did you think about Fireworks? Because it's kind of like the complete opposite of both of those. Like I find Fireworks I find like a lot of people love Fireworks, including our grandmother. Lita loves Fireworks. That's one of her favorite hip songs.
Okay, I can see that.
And she loves it because of the lyrics about hockey at the beginning. She
Right.
also just likes the song, like the way it sounds. I, I'm not gonna say how I feel about it. How do you feel about Fireworks?
Oh, well, I know you're coming in with a hot take there after, but I like the song. I like the song. I want to not like it, but I like it. Um, it's catchy. You can't deny it. Um, I mean, it's the most energy on the whole album, so that's one thing too. It's a really good like breath of fresh air after Thompson Girl into membership. Two dark songs, and then you get this fast, bright, cheery one.
Okay, so you didn't find it
Um,
like too, like the contrast. You didn't find it to be too abrupt.
no, no, I actually really liked it. I thought it gave the album a lot of character to kind of have that in there. Um,
Because I agree with you there. I just don't. I have to be in
and,
the mood for Fireworks. That's
and
my only
also,
thing about it.
I mean, okay, so here's my question for you. With the lyrics, how do you feel about it though? Because these lyrics stuck out to me like they felt a lot different than the rest of the lyrics on the album. And
I
you being the
find
lyric person,
I think the lyrics are my favorite part about Fireworks. I don't know if I say like they're top three lyrics on the whole album for me, but like musically, Fireworks is like almost too kind of pop, like too in your face, like too happy sounding. And it's very interesting. Like, I don't know if you like the way he plays, the way that Paul plays like the rhythm. He does a slide down for the F every other
Mm.
time because I think it's like C to F. I think so. The first time, like you could hear it, he does a C, then he slides down because it's on electric guitars where it's easier. But then the second time he goes back to the F, it's a normal barred version. So I think that's like kind of keeps the song interesting. But other than that, it's a pretty other than the bridge, where the bridge is like a really weird, like they hang on kind of the same note the whole time. But lyrically, I really like Fireworks. I mean, like when you start off with a lyric that says, well, not the first line, but one of the first lyrics he sings is, "You said you didn't give a fuck about hockey." Like, I never saw someone say that before. Like, that's a great line. And Lita loves it because he references Bobby Orr, who was a hockey player, like, you and me who don't follow hockey as much, like that line doesn't, like, it
Doesn't hit.
doesn't hit us as hard, but like, just like the random swearing, like, out of all the songs on this album, you're not expecting Fireworks where he drops the F bomb.
That was a good point.
But I love like the chorus lyrics, like, isn't it amazing that anything is accomplished? Like, I just love that line. And then I really like at the end too, where it kind of takes like the only part of the song where I feel like it gets bittersweet is at the end where he's singing, "This one thing is probably always supposed to stay. This one thing never goes away." Like that part kind of hits hard because like for some reason, like that's the only part of the song where I feel like it's almost like a little sad, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just a touch of somber there.
Yeah, some melancholy, which I really like. Um, so were these lyrics you liked, or were they like so weird that you didn't like them?
No, I liked the lyrics a lot. I thought they were really fun and they were really easy to follow. Where some of the other songs, I missed a lot of the words. I just couldn't really hear them. Like this one, I was able to follow with the lyrics, and it really elevated the song. Like the simple music was all the song needed, just that high energy, and I don't know. I think it went for something and it achieved it.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's definitely one of their more popular songs. Like it was one they played a lot live, and um, I do love Gord's vocal performance. I just have to be in the mood for it.
I can totally get that.
Now, a song that I never have to be in the mood for. Well, I'll say this: I'm a little sad that you didn't love Something On more because honestly, if I had to pick a favorite, I think Something On is my favorite.
Out of the whole album,
Yeah, and I know why it's not one of your favorites because musically, it's a very simple song. It's like a song that's mostly power chords. They're kind of played fast, so like, and it's not just like a Tom Petty song where it's just like kind of normal strumming and changes. Like, there's some times where they change in kind of faster intervals, but that's a song where it's a perfect amount of happiness. It's not too over the top like Fireworks. And it's not as obvious too as happy as like, just songs in general. It's just such a feel good song. I love is one of my favorites to like sing like along to when I listen to the album. I love the lyrics. I know you said you liked the lyrics on Something On. They're some of my favorite lyrics on the album.
yeah, and Something On I do like. Like I would put it, I guess maybe top 5. I haven't really ranked out the album, but it's not on the bottom of the list or anything. I think you make a good point though. I think it does kind of lie in a good spot. Like, you know, where like I feel like later in the album it gets kind of intense. This is one of the more straightforward moments.
And I guess I should point out, because I don't think you're going to know this tad bit of information, but it was recorded. So the band was in the studio, right? Recording this album in, I guess, 98 or no. Well, I don't know when it happened. Oh no, it says right here, Ice Storm of 98. So they were in the studio in 98 recording this album, probably like early of the year, where it's winter. And there's a huge ice storm to the point where there's a Wikipedia page on just this ice storm that
Mm.
happened in Ontario and other parts of Canada. And they were like snowed in their studio. and the band wrote and recorded this song, Something On, which is why there's a lyric in the song where he sings oh, I have to pull up the lyrics. The ice is covering the trees, and one of them is interconnecting with my Chevrolet Caprice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That
So
line did stand out to me.
that's the reference to the ice storm in that song. Um it's very
That's wild.
small, so but yeah. But like the rest of the song, I'm not really like, it has cool lines, but it's one of those songs too where it's like not obvious what the song's about. Other than like when he's singing about something on, I think he's talking about the actual equipment, phantom power, and that being on. Like when your mic is hot, that means it's like on, which is
Right.
another song they have in another album where it's called Hot Mic. Um, and I gotta say my favorite part is the bridge. I don't know if you catch it, but in the bridge, there's a section where the chords change, and it goes to like a chord you're not totally expecting, and Sinclair's bass line is just heaven to me. It's heavenly. Where he's like do 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 do. Sorry,
Okay.
this episode has a lot of me mimicking bass lines. I don't know why.
I'll have to listen closer to the bass line because it didn't
It's
jump
very
out to
subtle,
me.
but the first time is way easier to catch because there's no vocals during it.
Uh, I will say something. I feel like some of the earlier songs on the album, like Poets, for example, it took me a while to catch a lot of the details. I don't want to jump on Poets just yet, but I'll have to go back and listen. Maybe because like some of the later songs I think are a little more complex, there's a little more to digest. So maybe I spent more time kind of focusing on those details and maybe
Yeah.
overlooked some of the earlier ones.
Save the Planet. I've always loved that song. Curious if I have a feeling you're going to view it kind of as something on where it's like kind of maybe a little too straightforward for you, but it's a little faster paced than something on. It's a little livelier. I think the guitars they rip a little bit more.
When it starts up, it reminds me of El Dorado.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that a little bit.
It's kind of like Phantom Power's version of El Dorado. Yeah. I mean, I like the energy. It's got like kind of a playful vibe. But I don't know. It Once again, it's a little straightforward. Is this the one where he talks also about like water a lot?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of songs this album has themes. Poets,
Antarctica.
poets. This song, membership. Yeah, and then Emperor Penguin. There's one of my favorite line in the song is when he sings, and it sounds hearing incredible sounds that make the headphones
Oh,
edible.
yeah. That part's awesome.
Um, but yeah, there's like a line where he sings, if the bathwater's clear and my ears underwater, it's a tolerant hum from the core. Again, lines that like when you read them, you're like, how are they going to sing? Like, how is someone going to sing this in a song, like in a pop rock song? And then Gord finds a way. Now, did you catch at the end of the song the flute solo?
Yes.
Yeah,
That was the highlight for me.
yeah. Wasn't it so unexpected? You're like, I think the first time I heard it, I was like, what is that? I'm like, that's not a guitar. And that's actually again that was the producer, Steve Berlin. He plays the flute on Save the Planet.
What a nice credit to have.
And that's like one of the only times, like first of all, it's the only time on a hip song where there's a flute, but it's one of the only times where there's like an additional instrument or like an additional player. So
That's right. Yeah, they're a band that kind of is just the band, on the
yeah,
album. Which there's always a charm to that.
but yeah, I like Save the Planet. I like the energy. It definitely, helps kind of keep the album, going forward. I want to say Vapor Trails for a second. What did you think of the Rules and Chagrin Falls kind of going one after the other? Because those lead into your favorite one on the album, Escape. The Rules is kind of this like slower, kind of this like a lounge. I don't want to say jazz, but it's a very interesting song. I'm curious what you think the sound is. And then Chagrin Falls is like a kind of a wacky song, but it's got more energy. It's a more upbeat wacky song where the rules is like a slower wacky song.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to describe it.
I mean, wacky is not the best word for sure, but
But yeah, I mean, the rules is definitely interesting. It feels almost comedic at times, which I mean, I would say it is. Maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but um, it kind of has that like chill lo-fi hop thing, you know, like those like tracks you use on YouTube when you're like studying or going to sleep,
I can see that.
right? It has that kind of like laid back vibe. Um, that was one where I also didn't really want to like it just because it was like I don't know, it felt kind of silly, and the way he says the rules is just kind of so dramatic,
Well,
you know.
and I don't know because I can't remember. It might be Sinclair, their bassist, doing the backing vocals on the song instead of Paul. There's something about the chorus when they sing the rules where when I first heard it, I swore it was out of tune almost.
Right.
It's a very weird chorus, and I think this is a lot of people's least favorite because it just doesn't sound as pleasing to the ear. But I love it for its chillness. Like, I think it's a great song. Not top like 3 or 5, but I think it's great. And I love Chagrin Falls too. But it's kind of the opposite of why I like Chagrin Falls.
Well, yeah. So the rules is like fireworks. You kind of got to be in the mood for it. Um, and I do like how do you say the falls one?
Chagrin.
Chagrin?
Chagrin. You never heard that word before?
No? Should I have?
Well, I mean, like it's not just the name of a place.
It's not.
No, chagrin is like to have extreme distress or embarrassment.
Oh.
I don't know if you ever heard it. Like, oh, much to his chagrin.
Okay, maybe. Maybe I
But
heard some old
obviously,
person say that.
in this song, he's singing about a town in Ohio. Because
Yeah.
in the chorus, he sings Chagrin Falls, Ohio.
I did really like this song, and I liked it because I felt like the main portion, like I guess the verse or whatnot, it had a vibe, kind of like not the same vibe as Escape, but like it's kind of a chill out, you know. As you follow the riff, it just goes down and restarts, you know. And then I feel like the next section actually changes quite a bit. It gets heavier, you know. The chords are varied. Um, like I feel like that song has a lot of variation in where it goes harmonically. If that makes sense. Where I feel like some of the songs kind of have a similar sound throughout. I feel like this one actually changed a bit.
Well, that's interesting because I find this one to be kind of the same sound the whole time, but a sound I really like. So that's interesting that you kind of thought the opposite. I think it's a sound that's so different than the rest, but like it's to me it just really has like two parts, like the verse, intro, outro, and then the chorus where it changes.
I mean, yeah, but I feel like how much it changes. I don't know. I feel like the dynamic was quite noticeable. Not saying it's like, not that the rest of the album isn't, but I don't know. Maybe just from maybe like a songwriting perspective or something.
Now you ready for me to blow your mind a couple times here with this song?
Okay.
This is to me why Gord becomes like peak chord of this time period.
Okay, let me pull up the lyrics here.
So
let's do it.
There's a line that's plunged into the deeply freckled breast. You might recall he sings about breast on Poets, lawns cut by bare-breasted women. So not quite the same line, but it's weird for there to be 2 lines about breast on one album. I'm afraid to say Antarctica's next. Antarctica, Emperor Penguin.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're gonna
one more song too, I think.
Oh yeah, do you know it? Say it if you know it.
I can't remember which one it is. I can't remember. I don't know.
The line in Chagrin Falls, "Home solitude with options," is from Fireworks.
Oh,
Home solitude with options, artificial chaos isn't one of them. He sings it a little differently in Fireworks. In Fireworks, the line in the second verse is, "In wintertime, the house of solitude with options."
See, I didn't even notice that.
And in Chagrin Falls, he sings "The house of solitude with options." So this is the time where, and I'll just say too here. He's in Poets. He's the very end of the song. He sings, "They got to make it by swimming," and Emperor Penguin. He also sings about the women are swimming. So this is the time period where like Gord was taking themes of songs, like taking phrases of songs and putting them into different songs with different meanings, but using similar words, similar phrases. And I love it because even to this day, I'm still like a newer fan of this band. I have not been listening to this band since, their inception, because I wasn't even alive during their inception, but I'm still finding things in their songs or in Gord's solo songs where it's like, oh, that's totally a reference to this other song. So another reason this every time I listen to this album, there's just little hints that just, I still love and enjoy.
I do really like when artists do that. Elliott Smith has a lot of times like you'll hear like alternate versions of songs where he may use lyrics that he put on later songs as well. So that's always fun, and it kind of is like a reward for diving into the band so deep.
Yeah, and there's a song that was on this deluxe version they recently released. A song that so after this album, 2 years later, Gord releases his first solo album. The closing track on that solo album is called Insomniacs of the World Good Night. And it's a spoken word song over this very atmospheric ambient music. And it's slow and it's spoken word. We come to learn that on this Phantom Power deluxe version, they're releasing a song called Insomniacs. And of course, if you're like me, you're like, oh, that has to be like Gord must have started writing the lyrics to that solo song of his 2 years before it was released. And the Hip tried doing a version, but for some reason they just didn't love it and it didn't make the final version. And I was like, I don't know how they're going to turn this spoken word, very long, kind of artsy, atmospheric song into like a Hip song. And it's so perfect. It's this upbeat, almost kind of country sounding, bluesy kind of sounding, just fun. It's like a mix between like Something On and Save the Planet and Fireworks.
Okay.
And lyrically, it's the same, except Gord is somehow fitting these lengthy, long spoken word sentences into beautiful phrases, beautiful melody on the top of his register. But at the end of the song, there's some added lyrics that are not in the solo version of the song, where he sings about fireworks. He's singing about fireworks until there's no stars anymore, which is the last lines you hear. Not the last lines, but the lines you hear in Fireworks, the song. So
Wow.
it made me question, maybe they didn't put Insomniacs on the album because he's like, oh, well, I'm singing about fireworks in the song Fireworks. But then I'm like, no, that wouldn't have been an issue because he sings about the same things he sings the same lyrics in some of his other songs. So I was just definitely check that out later after this episode because I mean, you don't know the original, the Gord solo song, so it might not be as interesting to you, but it's very interesting to me how they turn. I mean, technically, I guess the Hip version came first, and then when Gord was doing a solo album, he's like, "How could I take the lyrics from this song and make it my own?" And then he creates this like really beautiful, slow spoken word song. So
So the lore goes deep.
the lore goes deep, yes, and I know I'm kind of ranting. Um,
But that's one of the best parts about like loving a band and just really like being committed to them is the lore. That's why I love the Beach Boys.
I do really quick. I know this episode's going long. We probably should wrap it up here pretty soon, but we haven't really talked about Poets or Vapor Trails. And I very end, I do want to hear your thoughts on Emperor Penguin, but let's start with Poets. Poets starts off the album. I'm just curious what your thoughts were on Poets.
First listen, I was a little underwhelmed, but I think part of that was because Can't Help But Compare It to Courage from Fully Completely. Or I don't know. This one was more of a like a what is the word?
It's a kind of a dancey song to me.
Yeah, like it's kind of like a bop,
It's kind
but
of groovy. Got a little funk, not like typical funk, but
I don't know. I guess it really felt in the middle. Like it felt like it was building up, but maybe didn't fully fully go off. Like it was steaming though. But I learned to like that a lot though, because it does like amp you up, but it's just not as exciting as I was maybe hoping for an opening track. But
I just love
that's
it for the energy. And like you're right, it's not like it's not as fast tempoed as Courage, but I do think Courage is a better song, but I go back to Poets just more because it just always,
really
it's kind of like something on where it always puts me in a good mood. Yeah. I don't
okay.
know. And I like how it's more vague too than Courage. I feel like Courage is more straightforward, even though he's using like quotes from a book that maybe, it's not a super popular book. Where in Poets, it's a lot more kind of like, what is he talking about? Like the lyric where he's singing about lawns cut by bare-breasted women, you know?
Right. I think part of it too is just I didn't love the vocal performance on it. Like I
Oh,
like the
interesting.
aggression of it, but this was one that got a little tiring on the ear after a while.
So then what did you think about Vapor Trails?
Vapor Trails was one that I really like, kind of off the go.
Okay, good. Because it's Vapor Trails is maybe it's top five. I mean, it's like probably number five because I love Something On. I love Emperor Penguin. I love Bob Cajun. But I think maybe one of the most underrated is Vapor Trails.
No, that one was really nice, especially after fireworks. You get this huge burst of energy, upbeat and happy, and then you get Vapor Trails, which is mean.
Did you like that bass intro? Right, with that
Yeah.
tone. I see. I thought you would like that at least if you were gonna like anything about the song.
See, I like when the hip do the vibey stuff, because that starts off vibey and then it gets
But
rocking.
it does get to a point where it's pretty rocking. Like
Right? No.
there's a really good solo at the end, and then like the last chorus they change the progression slightly, which I love.
Yeah, this I will say that's probably my favorite solo on the album. I know there's not too many solos, but I think that one would be my fave.
And the
It just sounds sick.
Vapor Trails has some standout lines to me too. Um,
And,
well, what were we gonna say?
no, I was to say, throw it out.
I think one of the best scored lines is "There's nothing uglier than a man hidden his stride."
Yeah, yeah, I like that one.
Like I don't know, maybe just because we are men, but like so maybe we find it relatable. But it's just such like a funny line. But he sings it in such a serious way that it doesn't come off that way. And there's just so many different ways you can interpret it that I don't know. I just love that line. Um, but yeah, I love Vapor Trails. First of all, I don't know if you know, I think there's a Rush album called Vapor Trails, which came out after this album.
Oh, really?
I believe so.
That's kind of wild. The lore goes deep.
Laura goes deep. But yeah, I have all Vapor Trails. I love the bass line, like I said, the guitar solo, the
I like when he
backing
says "coffee
vocals.
mate."
Yeah, there's just words that really stick out when he's singing them.
Do you care to explain the past Mexicans all dressed up in beige shirts, leaning over their hose lyric?
Like where it comes from, I don't
Anything?
I don't. Well, first of all, I don't know too if you notice he sings Chambermaid in this song, and then he also sings Chambermaid in Escape Is at Hand.
Oh, I didn't. What is a chambermaid? Is it bad? I don't know that.
Um, well, I think Escape Is at Hand, he's like referencing like another made up band. I
Oh,
think. I'm going to Google to see as what it sounds like, a maid who cleans bedrooms and bathrooms
oh, okay.
in a hotel.
I can believe that.
I mean the lyrics about Mexicans dressed in beige shirts leaning over their hose, like it just sounds like people doing like yard work to me, which I don't know if that's like a stereotypical line. Um, but I don't I love the imagery of that because I love that bridge. I love like musically and sonically where that bridge goes with like the vocal melody. But I don't know. I can like just see people like using hose and sprinklers going off, and then at the end, those lyrics are sung in the background by Paul Engwa while Gord is singing the last. While Gord is singing the last, I think chorus of the song.
Right.
So again, little details, but again, like there's a lot of songs on here where there's lines where I really can't give you a solid answer. But I the more I listen to them, the more I feel like I come to a conclusion of what they're about. And that was kind of the case with Emperor Penguin. When I first listened, I had no idea. But then the more you listen, like you kind of get pieces and chunks of it. Um, like, well, first of all, it starts off with like a weird lyric. I like the tone of your trumpet. Come on, let's spill some paint
Raise a glass of milk.
to the end of another day. Yeah. And that's like where I think like it sounds like things you do with kids, like finger painting and drinking milk. And then he even says the kids are all right, just unmanageable. They won't do a damn thing you say. But then it goes into this other narrative of like someone calling on like a
Like
radio
talk
station.
show.
Yeah. Someone talking about how alien invasion is the only chance for unity. But then they interrupt the caller and they sing it's a physical impossibility, which I think then when he sings it at the end of the song, he's using it as like, yeah, it's aliens are they're not it's not possible for aliens to exist. But then I feel like at the end of the song, he's singing you're a physical impossibility. And I feel like he's singing it to someone like maybe his wife or maybe just to women in general who have kids who, you know, just, they're like Emperor Penguin, devotion to the egg. Like I know when you say those lines, and I know earlier you were joking about that line, but like out of context, it's a funny line. But then like I think he's using it in a very serious context, very like admirable context. The women are swimming from half an ocean away. And then another line too. Well, I don't know that your crust is just incredible. I don't know what that means.
That was another I wanted to ask you about.
The radio was edible, which makes me go back to the Save the Planet line where he's like,
right,
sounds that make the headphones edible. And then he ends that line with, "Don't wipe your asses with your sleeves."
The poetic genius.
Yeah. I think it's like a very funny way of giving someone advice.
Right.
So,
I do really like that, even though some of these songs seem to be like maybe about like, serious themes and topics and stuff, he never sounds like he's taking himself too seriously, Like, I don't know. I don't know if that's just
there's
me, I find some of it's kind of comedic in a way. Or humorous.
The beginning of the song where he's talking about, I like the tone of your trumpet, milk and stuff like, yeah, it's tongue in cheek, but then as the song goes on, it's like you have to kind of start wondering like how the piece is going to connect. That's why I like it. Like sometimes listening to their music is a puzzle, but never like musically, which is why I like. You can listen to bands like Tool or Dream Theater, where you're like, doing math, trying to come up with the time signature of the song. And I'm not into that almost ever, but I am into it when it comes to lyrics because I just find that to be more impressive for some reason to me. Like, I am impressed when someone can play the hell out of an instrument and can write like really puzzling pieces of music. But I just find it maybe more impressive when someone can do that, but with words. Which I do think where you and I differ a little bit, which is why I think I find this album more enjoyable than you did, even though it sounds like you did like it. But even like the end of Emperor Penguin, I think those like guitar slides from Rob and how the music just kind of builds and builds. And that's actually my favorite song on the album. I know you said Vapor Trails, but now that I'm thinking about it, the ending to Emperor Penguin is absolutely my favorite guitar moment on the album.
Yeah, that slide is really good.
The music,
it just does really make the ending.
It just really sounds like really cinematic almost. Like the song just kind of keeps going higher and higher until it just finally comes to an end where it just kind of all just kind of, washes away.
You know what that section reminds me of?
What's that?
That song of yours you're working on, Clean Slate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It wasn't the first section. I think it was like the second section.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end, the whole walk down thing.
I do have like an outro too on that song. I wouldn't say like I intentionally was trying to do it like Emperor Penguin, but yeah, there is like an outro where it does kind of build and sounds kind of hopeful, which I find Emperor Penguin to sound very hopeful.
It's got an interesting mood to it. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's one I enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I would only say there's like Membership and Vapor Trails are really the only really dark songs on this album. So that's why I think my next album I'm giving you from them,
Not Escape.
I don't find Escape to be
It's like,
dark.
well, I mean, it's maybe not like a
Well, it's
dark,
dark.
but
It's dark if you
it's
like.
moody, in that sort of way. It's
I don't.
dark.
It's vibey, but I don't know if it's moody. I will say,
No.
if you dig deeper into the lyrics, the lead singer of that band he's singing about, he actually committed suicide. And there's a reference online that someone thinks that they checked out an hour ago is actually like a reference to that, and like kind of a morbid
Oh.
way. But I don't think that was the intention of that line. But we'll never know Core's intention, because he left a lot of his lyrics kind of up in the air, which I think is a cool thing. But yeah, so if you read it is kind of a sad song when it was written about someone who took their own life. But I don't think the whole song. I think the vibe of the song is more like singing about the love of playing music with people and stuff like that. But
Okay, I can see it.
I kind of see what you're getting at. But I probably my next time I'm giving you is their follow up to Fully Completely, called Day for Night. And you want to talk about some dark songs? That album's got it.
Okay, a
For
little mini
sure.
waiting for me.
Like, there's really no happy. I don't know if there's really a happy sounding song like Something On or Fireworks. There's definitely no fireworks on that album.
No fireworks. Okay.
No fireworks. Even like the slower acoustic, like the one slower acoustic song on the album, not an upbeat song whatsoever. Because literally, like, before you even get to the chorus, he's singing about Hitler. So, um, yeah, no really bright moments on that album. So, but so overall, you enjoyed it, just not as much as Foley, but it does sound like you enjoyed it, right?
Yeah. No. Exactly. And I think I'll continue to enjoy it more too. Um, I feel like it's definitely. I mean, for you, when you heard it, did you cling to it quickly, or did it take you a few listens, or did it
It
just
took a
take time?
Well, to be fair with all their music, it did, because when I think I was listening to them, I was kind of listening to like their greatest hits album that was on Spotify, which is like, got songs from every one of their albums, at least up to the release of that greatest hits album.
Yeah.
And when I listened to the songs that I didn't know off those albums, those ones took a little longer to grow. And not because I think the best songs were on the greatest hits album. Like I said, there's so many underrated moments. Like yeah, Escape and Something On are on that greatest hits album, because it's not even just greatest hits. The fans actually voted for what songs should be on it. But
Really?
yeah,
That's awesome.
but like, if I was to include songs from this album, yeah, I would probably include those two. But I would include Emperor Penguin. I would include Vapor Trails. Like, those weren't like singles or hits, not even in Canada. But I love those songs. But yeah, that some of them did take a lot of growing. But that's what I love about the Hip, is that like, there's some bands that even I've given you. Like, I love Spoon, and maybe musically some things take longer to digest, but like lyrically, I don't ever get that too much from a Spoon song, right? Where then like musically, there's times there's way more to kind of digest than like a Hip song. So, but I think you will find with the band, you'll find some albums that are more like Fully Completely for you, where there's a better balance, probably for you at least. Because for me, Day for Night, when we get to it, my huge gripe, the thing that literally brings it down probably a whole letter grade almost, is production. Where I will agree with you, this album, I know we didn't talk about production too much, although you said you didn't love like the way the drums sounded. I do think Fully Completely sounds better.
Right. Right. It's it just hits hard.
Yeah, it's a little punchier. It's sometimes it's cleaner, but um, I love these songs so much that production never, at least for me, gets in the way of these songs.
Yeah. 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 Production wasn't like, you know, distracting or anything like that. And I like that it was cohesive throughout, even though there was kind of different styles going on, just acoustic. There was like a lot of percussion, I felt, in some of the songs.
Oh yeah, I think when they used to play Poets Live, Gord would use like shaker on stage.
Nice, nice.
And then I know during, getting really off topic, he used to have a shaker that was a shape of a banana. Like Radiohead have one in the shape of a lemon, because in one of their songs he sings about a lemon.
Oh, is that why they have that?
Yeah, there's the lyric in Everything in Its Right everything in its right place where he's singing I woke up sucking a lemon. I
Okay.
woke up sucking on a lemon. Yeah. But the hip, I don't know why it was a banana, but there was this, he would like in the middle of a song start ranting about a banana. It was I'll find the clip for you. It's really funny, but it's like super bizarre. But that, again, that's why I love Gord so much. It was everything just felt like in the moment, but it's still great to listen back to it later on. Um, so yeah, I think that'll do it for this episode. If you've managed to stick through this whole, I know it's probably close to an hour and a half now. Um, I thank you for your endurance. Um, this is actually kind of more how like our very first episode was when we did our very first episode of the podcast. I think it was like an hour and a half long talking about the hip. And that's mostly because I go on so much rants. This is because I love this band so much. I mean, I know you love Incubus, but it's not like Incubus is in like your top 3 bands, right? Where
Right.
Hip is like probably arguably they're competing with Pearl Jam. And Pearl Jam maybe hasn't been released stuff I like. Where the Hip, I mean, they're not releasing really new material anymore, but they ended on a really high note. They never really had a low point for me. Like their lowest point for me was their first album. So to me, they only got better over time. So, but
And I think for this album, or just the Hip as a whole band, I think the more I hear different stuff of theirs, different albums, different approaches, because they seem like, they try out a lot of things. Like I feel like once I kind of hear the different shades of them, then I think I'll like appreciate maybe some of the songs that didn't grab me quite as hard on
oh yeah,
first few listens.
yeah, and I'm very excited to give you because I think I'm going to give you Day for Night next, and then probably Trouble the Hen House, which is maybe their most experimental. But maybe in between, I'll throw you one of the ones that's more straightforward again. To kind of because they have a couple others that are kind of experimental too. My Music at Work, or sorry, Music at Work was very experimental because the song is called My Music at Work. So we'll see, but that'll do it for this episode. I don't want to spoil our next couple episodes, what we have going, but if all goes according to plan, we're going to have some great couple of episodes coming down the pipeline here. So stay tuned for that. And then, of course, next month, we will continue with our album for album series. I have an album I'm giving you next month. I've been wanting to give you for like half of this year, but I've just been waiting for the right moment. And that is finally happening next month. So, but I'm going to hold off on telling the listeners what it is. So stay tuned for that. But until then, we hope everyone takes care and you will be hearing from us soon. Bye-bye.